Today's episode of the 7-Minute Security Podcast is brought to you by SafePass.me. SafePass.me is the only enterprise solution to protect organizations against credential stuffing and password spraying attacks. Visit SafePass.me for more details and tell them 7-Minute Security sent you to get a 10% discount. That's SafePass.me.
You know security is hard, so let's assume we're probably gonna get pwned by noon. But if we all start to get the basics right, we might not fully get pwned until tonight.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to another experiment in live streaming for the 7-Minute Security Podcast. My name is Brian Johnson. I'll be your friend and your host for this episode, and I will assume, please, if something critical is not working, like audio or video, thank you for being good about telling me so in the chat. Well, I've got hopefully what you will find an action-packed bundle of information here, all focused on simple ways to test your SIEM. Just a quick background on this talk. I gave this a few weeks ago virtually at a security conference here in Minneapolis, and the whole goal of it is to show you some free tools, free techniques, free stuff that you can run against your environment that isn't harmful. But the idea being you can test your SIEM, figure out if it's worth all the blood, sweat, and tears and money that you're pouring into it. Just a couple quick newsy things before we get into the goods. This Thursday, 1 p.m. Central live stream, we do that every week. So if you want to kind of keep an eye on the schedule of what's coming up, go to 7minsec.com/live. And that, I will admit, I'm doing a terrible job of promoting right now because I don't have the next week's lineup of content like out there so you can see what's coming up. I usually do have that, but I'll admit I got a little lazy and had a bit of a medical emergency during a break that I'll tell you about briefly. But anyway, if you're like, hey, I just want to mark on my calendar Thursday, 1 p.m. Central. If I don't have anything better to do, I'll come virtually hang out with 7-Minute Security and talk security. I would love for you to do that. Also, shameless self-plug and hype alert. While I was down with this medical emergency, Christmas morning, and the days that followed, I did some work on our ebook. So we've got at ebook.7minsec.com, there is a $7.77 ebook that is all about internal network penetration testing and walking you through step by step a lot of the stuff that we do in our pen testing. So enumerating Active Directory and using Bloodhound and SharpHound and all these different tools. The book has been at 1.0 for about a year, but as you can see at the bottom of your screen there, 1.1 is just about ready to come out. And at any time you buy the book for $7.77, you get lifetime upgrades. So it's not like you would have to pay twice. But if that's teasing you up enough where you're like, okay, I'll drop $7 on this thing and see if it's any good. I would expect in the next week that 1.1 will hit the ether. So check it out at ebook.7minsec.com. Also, just one word of warning. If you were here last week or the week before, I think you saw this. But I have a soundboard. I'm not afraid to use it. Okay, so if I want to insert Arnold Schwarzenegger going, yeah! Actually, I'm not sure if you heard that, but I will do that. And you just need to go ahead and be okay with it. Okay. All right, so let's get into this. I will, in this talk, I'll give you just a quick introduction if we've not virtually met before and a quick health update. Okay. I want to give you a tiny bit of background of why this talk is so important to me. And then we're just going to dive right into the heart of the matter. And we're going to talk about and demonstrate simple ways, 7 of them to be exact, because, 7, right? 7 ways to test your sim, figure if it's worth its weight in dollars and bits and bytes. I'm Brian Johnson with 7 Minute Security here in the Twin Cities. That is recovering from 2 days of intense snowfall. And so my boys, their backs are currently broken because, it was so hard, Dad, to shovel the walk. In fact, I wish I could put up a picture right now. I had to clarify my instructions with my boys a little bit the last couple of days. I said, and they took turns doing this. I said, I'll handle part of the driveway. You're going to handle the other half, and then also you're going to handle the walk out from the front door around the sidewalk to the driveway. And they, if you're on audio, you won't be able to see this, but they shoveled a path about 1 shoe width. And so if you were to hop on 1 foot, you'd have no problem, getting to the car. But I had to say, no, this needs to be like wide enough that an actual person could walk without stepping into 3 feet of snow. So I got some work to do. They're a work in progress. But so am I. So, so 7 Minute Security, we do pen testing, risk assessments, training, security miscellany. We've got the podcast we welcome you to check out. And of course, on YouTube, you can see this episode live and all the past stuff we've done. So check that out. And then quick health update. So I talked about this with a bunch of you on Slack and other channels, but I'll try to condense the story, which I'm not very good at. But Christmas Eve dinner, my wife made this wonderful pot roast and dinner spread. And she got the pot roast out of the oven, and there's, all these little kind of cubed, potato chunks. So I grabbed one that was warm on the outside, but I did not realize until it went in and was like, mid throat going to, down the hatch, that the middle of it was boiling lava hot. And so I had no beverage nearby. So I ran for the sink. It was too far down to like up, had to go down. So I just did a water chaser, right? And then it hurt. Well, the pain scale when you go into the ER, like 1 through 10, how are you feeling? I'd put it at a 9.5. Hurt a lot, hurt right away and hurt continuously. But then it kind of got numb. And I thought, oh, this will be like when you burn the roof of your mouth, and then as it heals, it just kind of flakes off. So it went numb for a while, but then by like 1 a.m. Christmas morning, the swelling was so bad and it hurt so bad to swallow. And I was like producing saliva at an incredible rate. I bet you're glad I bet you're right now, you're glad you tuned into this episode. I'll continue with the TMI just for a little bit. But yeah, so I was, just filling a bag full of spit, and then also not able to breathe very well. It was starting to restrict my airway. So I hightailed it to the ER, and they pumped me full of some meds. And they're like, we can't see what's going on just with our little, flashlight scope here. So the burn is probably further down than we can see. And you really got to get an ENT appointment. So I went to my extended family Christmas, came back, made the ENT appointment. And I should put up a little warning here. If you don't want to see gross stuff, I'm going to show you the 20-second video of the scope that they did when they went up my nose, around the corner, down looking into the throat. And it looks like something out of like Stranger Things. I'm going to show you that because, well, one person was interested. And that's really all the encouragement I need is for one person to be interested in that. So if you don't want to see that, then I would just say, let's see, what do we got? It's like 20 seconds. Maybe it's a little bit more than that. 45. Don't look. Okay. So don't look in 3, 2, 1. So they do a quick exam of the front of the nose. And this is really uncomfortable. If you've not had the pleasure of this, I don't wish that you ever do. I mean, they numb you up real good, but it's like this splinter that it feels like it's in your face. And it took everything I had to not just push the doctor out of the way and yank this out of my face. But he just wants to check that the throat and esophagus and everything is intact. So you can see probably where the irritated areas are. But what he moved past that right away and wanted to see that vocal cords and esophagus structure itself didn't have any damage. Because apparently if it did, then I might have to go to a swallow study and I could have had vocal cord damage, all this stuff that was like my worst nightmare. Because of course, as soon as this happened, Christmas Eve night, I, went to Dr. Google, and that was a bad idea because they're like, well, you're definitely going to die from this. It's just a matter of if it's today or 6 hours from now. But thank God and knock on wood and whatever you pray to or have allegiance to, doctor was like, everything's good. You've definitely got, irritated, burnt area, but nothing that should cause long-term damage. So for now, the prescription is lots of water and popsicles and wait it out. So thank you for those of you who are checking on me. And actually, I think, I didn't do a live stream last week because I had no voice. So today and yesterday are the most talking I've done since Christmas Eve, which some people are happy about. Okay, so let's get into this. Simple ways to test your SIEM. And what I want to cue this conversation up with, kind of segue into it, is why this talk? Why is this such a source of anger and passion simultaneously for me? The best way I think I can illustrate this is when we finish up our internal pen tests. One of the things we've started doing in the last year or so is if we know that the client has some sort of managed like SIEM or SOC service, or even if they run it themselves, we include at the end of all the findings an addendum that looks like this. And it's a timeline of attacks or a timeline of key moves, if you think of it like a chess game, right? That we did that we feel should be detectable. Now, I'm going to admit to you, I'm definitely not a blue team guru by any stretch, but I know from doing a lot of pen tests that there are certain things that are signaturable, detectable, right? And on so many of these things, we often find we aren't detected at all. So we put in this addendum, time-stamped attacks, time and date stamped attacks, so that the client can go back to their own tools, or they can go to the third-party service or whatever they use and review that and be like, okay, if we saw this attack but not that one, why? Do we need to write a new signature? Do we need to tune the signature we have? So on and so forth. But a lot of times, this addendum looks like this. We came in, we did a bunch of Nmap and mass scanning, right? So in other words, super loud network scanning, and the SIEM or SOC did not detect it. Okay. Came back the next day, did a bunch of password spraying, right? Where we're trying to log into every account in AD one or more times. In this example, we tried to spray the password summer 2022 and got 3 accounts compromised from that effort. No detection. Then we did 2 what they call roasting attacks, Kerberoasting and ASREPRoasting. Little description of what that attack is and what how that is should be interpreted as an attacker looking for easy button creds or easy button wins. And then we were able to crack a domain cred from one of those roastable accounts, and we added our test account to the domain admins group. Now we'll talk about group membership in a little bit here. I understand that in a lot of real world attacks, an attacker probably isn't likely going to do something loud like, hey, I'm going to be braggadocious and add myself to the domain admins group. But a lot of times in our pen testing, the client requests that as a, that's sort of planting our flag going, yes, we got to one of the goals of the pen test, which is usually privilege escalation and trying to get into one of those groups. So that is a new member added to a high privilege group. And then we do the Mortal Kombat Active Directory finishing move. We take all the hashes out of Active Directory and kind of complete the simulation of total compromise of AD. And after doing all that, we may at the very end additionally simulate the scanning for important files and folders, and maybe take some of that data. Usually we use just benign garbage data, but we'll create like a gig of use like a Linux tool. I can't remember what the command line is off the top of my head, but you can create essentially just a file of noise. But we'll simulate exfiltrating that as well, just to see are you able to detect us doing this SMB share hunting, and or can you detect data leaving the environment? And at the end of the day, what the report is really saying is we did a lot of very noisy and or obvious attacks over the course of many hours, days, sometimes weeks, occasionally months. And too often our reports conclude with a statement like this: 7-minute security reviewed this timeline with sample company and determined no alerts for any of the attacks detailed above were generated during our test. Now, here's the part. Well, I always want to be totally transparent with you. When we do all the stuff that I just talked about, I kind of do the happy dance. If you ever listen to our podcast, we call it the DAD, the domain admin dance. It's not like a thing on TikTok you probably see people doing, but maybe we could start it. If it's like a trend you want to try to start with me, I'm willing to do it. But really nobody wants to see me dance, especially my wife. But I get kind of happy when we've done all this stuff. But at the same time, I've got frowny face because I feel bad for the client, right? Because in their mind, they are writing checks and sending dollars out the window. They're spending 50, 60, 100 grand on some of these security monitoring service that didn't detect a single thing that we did in this environment. So what we are going to cover now is really get into what are some of the easy ways you can get up and running with recreating some of these attacks in your own environment and, testing that SIEM and putting some nice pressure on these software and hardware packages so that they are telling you things that you should care about if this was not a pen test and indeed a real threat actor in the environment. I just want to make clear too, I'm not setting out to shame and blame any vendors. Like hopefully I don't come off as having like a bad attitude about this. Quite the opposite. I would just hope like, even if one person takes this, runs the tests in their environment, and then can, I would recommend you gently challenge your vendor like, hey, I just did these things. Here's the date and time stamps. Why aren't you detecting any of these? That I think by itself will help you figure out what is the tone, what is the relationship like between you and these companies and these services. Because if they try to, I feel very strongly that if they try to secure explain things to you or make you feel like a moron for bringing this stuff up, that, for me, that's not the kind of company I want to work with. But again, I would recommend don't go in all hot and bothered, right? Like, what the blank is up with this? Or if I had the soundboard, I would say, don't go in there and say like, oh, I can't find it. Never mind. I was going to do the censor sound, like there was if there was a swear word, but I can't find it. So instead I'll just say this.
It's turbo time.
That didn't make any sense. So one easy way to get up and going with a system that can help you conduct these attacks. I really can't think of anything better to recommend to you than good old Kali. If you need, specific help getting spun up with a Kali system that you could throw on an old laptop or a VM, let me know. But typically what I do is just download the image right from Kali.org. I stick it on a little thumb drive, and then Rufus, there's a million tools out there that'll drop an ISO image onto a USB drive. But Rufus, I just find is really friendly. Just you point it to the ISO, you say start, boom, it images the SAN disk, and you're off and running. And then just boot an old laptop, and you will be running a live Kali instance. So you don't even have to install it on the hard drive and like overwrite what's there. You could just run Kali live off the USB boot and do, I think, all but one attack we're about to show right from that live environment. And then when you're done, just take the USB drive out, reboot, and you're back into Windows or Linux or whatever you have on that box. Okay, so attack number one, good old-fashioned port scanning. And really can't think of a better tool to recommend to you for port scanning than Nmap, which has an install for pretty much flipping everything, right? Mac, Windows, Linux. It'll be set right at the command line, ready to go if you do that Kali boot I was talking about. So all you need to do is pop open a terminal, type nmap, and recreate the attack we're about to do. But just to run an incredibly basic scan, just do nmap space the subnet you want to scan. So in my test environment, I've got 10.0.7.0 or .x. That's my network. So I just did nmap space 10.0.7.0/24. Off it goes. It wasn't all that long ago that I learned nmap isn't going to scan all 65,000 and change ports off the bat. I think it is the top 1,000 ports. They have actually a file. There's a I can't remember what the name of the file is, but they have a file that has a list of popular ports, and I think nmap just running, if you run it vanilla style, it'll scan for the 1,000 most popular ports. So it's things like web interfaces and SSH and SMB and RDP and that kind of thing, right? So that's a quick way to just queue up a scan, fire it off against your environment. Now, one thing you'll see for each of our tips here is that I've included some sanitized responses that these SIEM and SOC vendors have given me when I've approached them with my client to kind of go over that addendum I was showing you earlier, right? I've been a part of some of those conversations. Some have been heated, some have been extremely productive. But, we'll say, okay, hey, 7-minute security came in here. They did all sorts of nmap scanning. Why aren't you detecting this? Here's one response I got. And I got to remember, this is audio podcast too, which the audio version will come out tomorrow. So I'm going to read. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence by reading what you can see, but our audio podcast friends can't. So one vendor says, by default, we ignore port scan traffic because port scans often happen as part of routine inventory and or vulnerability scanning operations. I think that sounds like an accurate statement to me, that port scanning can happen from things like Nessus, Landsweeper, Run Zero, right? Those inventory systems. However, and this is, of course, just my opinion, if I'm the sysadmin or network admin that has brought in a SIEM or SOC service, I don't want them ignoring port scans by default. I want to tell them, okay, 10.0.7.7, that's my Nessus box. Ignore that because I know it's going to be doing scanning on a daily basis. I don't want my vendor to go, no, don't be all that concerned about port scanning, right? And also I get, I talk to people about this kind of stuff a lot, and they'll tell me, really, do you care that port scanning is happening? I mean, by itself, it's not, the action itself is usually not that big of deal. But again, I would say, even if an attacker isn't likely to an advanced threat actor isn't likely to plop onto my environment and do that loud port scan, again, I still just want to know that it's happening. And I give the example of a company I worked for a number of years ago. I kind of joke sometimes that, what if Bob from accounting takes his CISP classes and he wants to exercise his nmap skills on the corporate network? That actually did happen at a place that I worked at a number of years ago. He was attacking the corporate wireless, but still, that whole insider threat, even if the insider isn't meaning to be a threat, bottom line, I want to know that port scans are happening. A second response I got from a different vendor is the following. We look for a large number of systems to be scanned, and additionally, the number of ports scanned per host must be above a certain threshold. So in other words, what they're telling me is that default nmap scan of about 1,000 ports was not enough to trigger their thresholds and kick off some screaming alerts, right? If that's the case, or if that's a threshold you need to hit in your environment, then I would welcome you to give mass scan a try. This is the one tool that I don't think in your Kali live boot is going to be ready to go right out of the gate. But I'm not going to talk through this for the audio podcast friends, but I'll have here on video for your reference the few commands that you need to run to get mass scan going. And this is taken directly from their main landing page of the GitHub repo tool. So there's just a couple of apt-get and git clone commands you need to install the dependencies, pull the tool down, and then you've got to run a couple make commands to build the mass scan binary. But it's about 4 commands, and I think takes a couple of minutes tops. But pretty soon you're at the point where you can type mass scan, enter, and be ready to rock this thing. So right on Mass Scan's page, they've got some nice, and if you Google for these too, there's people that have nice guides on, really tuning these to make them, either super aggressive or super low and slow. But if you want to do one scan that just turns it up to flipping 11, you can do mass scan space TAC P 1 through 65535, comma U for UDP colon 1-65535. That will scan the whole kit and caboodle, right? All 65,000 and change ports on both the TCP and the UDP side. Now that's going to take quite a long time, even on like a single class C, but it is a way to kind of do your due diligence, do your homework, be able to come to your SIEM and SOC provider and say, well, I ran a vanilla Nmap scan, but I also scanned everything and the kitchen sink. And so, you're still not detecting anything. Should I expect you to? Why not? And then have those conversations. As far as detecting it, I'm gonna, a few times in this talk, I'm gonna point back, shameless self-plug, but 7MS episode 551 was one of my favorites, and it was with Matt from Blue Mira, and we actually we talked through this talk that I'm taking you through, and I got his opinion on like, why are some of these things detected? Why are they not? And what are some, getting started tips to be able to detect these? So he offers some good opinion on like, hey, port scanning is happening. Software is going to do it. That by itself might not be something to get all excited about. But, and I haven't tested this myself, but it makes sense that he says, one of their approaches is, even if you're not using the Windows firewall, have the logs turned on. That would help you correlate a situation where you could, build a detection or build a rule that says, well, if I see a single IP making SMB hits to, let's say, some threshold of systems, right? That is simulating, well, either SMB enumeration or port scanning, right? And that could give me, visibility into Bob from accounting working on his CISP and doing some Nmap scanning. I was always kind of thinking about it, since I'm not a blue teamer, I was thinking of it as like, well, unless you've got one of those SIMs that is actually looking at a copy of all the network traffic, maybe I shouldn't expect, that a system could detect on this. But Matt really opened my mind to the idea of, again, turning on the audit logs and then correlating those, from multiple hosts and being able to say, whoa, in a 1 minute period, 70 hosts had an SMB connection attempted. So check out that episode. He's got, more insight and kind of expands on it there. But I thought that was an interesting approach to port scanning detection without necessarily looking at the traffic level. All right, password spraying. Oh, this is another one. So second attack here, and I've got, if you're only joining us via audio, the video, of course, will have the links to everything and also the MITRE attack numbers. So, a lot of these SIEM and SOC solutions brag, right, that, oh, we detect every MITRE attack thing that there is. This, I think, again, without being a jackwagon, gives you a bit more ammunition to say, like, this isn't some weird obscure attack. This is grounded in MITRE attack, and it is attack X, right? Again, coming to the table with all your homework done, I think lends a little bit more weight to you approaching your vendor and challenging them on this stuff. Password spraying, best tool I can think of to have you try this out is Rubius, which I don't know. I don't think there's like a Python Rubius or Rubius equivalent. Maybe there is. If somebody in the chat knows, please drop it there. But that's my go-to for password spraying because it's so easy to just run, pick the password you want to spray with, and off it goes. However, let's just have a tiny bit of this sidebar conversation. If you go to the link for the Rubius tool, you'll see, oh, geez, I got to download this and compile this in Visual Studio. And personally, I have no business ever being in Visual Studio. I do know enough to open a project and say build, but even that I think could, scare some people off. Fortunately, there is a repository called Sharp Collection that has pre-built these EXEs for you. Now that makes some people's bum holes pucker up all small because they go, whoa. I thought you security people tell me not to download random EXEs from the internet. And as a general rule, I would say, yes, that's true. But I would also say, you need to kind of do your homework and figure out who you're going to trust at some point, some security practitioner or company or what have you, and trust the code and the EXEs that they're offering. And in this case, we don't have to go deep into it, but in this case, I choose to trust the folks behind Sharp Collection. So if you download the Sharp Collection, then inside of that is the pre-built EXEs for a bunch of popular offsec tools, and Rubius is one of them. So that you'll need to run in Windows, or I don't know, you fancy Linux people, maybe, I don't know if you can, whatever, Wine and all these other things that I hear about where you can make stuff run on stuff it shouldn't. I don't know about that, but I do know that just dropping rubius.exe in a Windows box makes it really easy to just run Rubius space the word spray space /password : the password you want to spray with, which I'm going to do winter 2022 exclamation in this case. And then I have specified /out file : winter.txt. So what that means is that any valid hits I get from that password spray operation will get saved out to a file called winter.txt. So if I pop open winter.txt, we will see that I've got Captain Underpants. His account uses password winter 2022. And I think maybe I said it before, but one reason I think Rubius is so slick to use for this is that all you need is a valid account. You just need to be running under a valid AD account. Run that command I just showed you, and it is smart enough to build the user list, try to log into everybody's account, and it will even skip over any accounts that are disabled. So yeah, let it rip. And this is one I think maybe only a half a dozen times have I ever been caught running password spraying. So why doesn't it get detected? One vendor says our detection service is watching for one or more account lockouts to happen in a short period of time. But again, with that attack we just did, we intentionally did not lock out accounts. So I didn't say try to log into every account with the following list of passwords, right? Because if I would have loaded up a list of 5 or 6 passwords and just let Rubius run, I probably would have locked up nearly every account in Active Directory. Instead, I'm just going to do these kind of, I'm going to try to log in with winter 2022. Then I'm just going to wait, maybe come back an hour later and do, fall 2022. But I don't want to lock out accounts on purpose. I don't want to let the blue team know that I'm coming. So to me, this detection misses the mark to say, well, we're waiting for account lockouts to tell us if like account spraying and shenanigans are happening. As far as detecting it, again, I would point you back to episode 551. Matt from Blumira offers some really sound advice. Talks about the importance of looking for both NTLM and Kerberos failures and successful authentication from a single IP over a period of time. That would help you indicate that password spraying is happening. And he says, don't limit the detections to just successes or just failures. You need to be able to correlate both. Otherwise, you will miss successful password spraying attempts. And he's got a great tip too about the Kerberos auth logs. I believe those don't populate for viewing and collecting unless you manually turn them on. So here's another example of, sort of Windows out of the box, maybe not being awesome at log verbosity, but you have to go in under the hood and kind of, twist the dials and turn things up to 11. And then it will really start to tell you the stuff that you actually give a rip about. Okay, now we get into the couple roasting attacks, Kerberoasting and ASREPRoasting. They have MITRE attack numbers on them. Whenever I need to give a client a very technical Kerberoasting explanation, I quote this Black Hills Information Security article, which I'm sorry I'm missing the link for, but if you Google a toast to Kerberoast, I believe that's the title of the article. That'll have this snippet in it. But I give them the high level Brian Johnson explanation of, the kind of risk, the problem here with these Kerberoasting attacks is that if you've got accounts out there that are managing things like SQL databases and IAS and other things, if you've got services running under an account, they get registered with Active Directory in such a way that I can come along with Bob from accounting's AD account and say, hi, Active Directory, could you please spit out a list of those accounts and a hash that I can take offline if I want and try to crack. And that's our path to privilege escalation a lot of times, because these SQL and IAS and other accounts that are out there, they're often out there for a long time because, there's server sprawl, right? Too many SQL servers. This account used all over the place. Nobody really knows all the places this account is used. And they're so scared to rotate a password and maybe break services or bring them to a screeching halt. So they stay out there forever. They often have weak passwords. Boom, we come in, do the Kerberoasting, roast a hash. Usually it's a high privileged account because it's running SQL or IAS. We crack it, we get insta DA. To do that, again, the Kali VM will serve you pretty well, but there's a couple things I think just work really slick in Windows. And since we just used Rubius for password spraying, I wanted to show it works really well for Kerberoasting as well. You can just do rubius.exe space Kerberoast. And if you do have any Kerberoastable users in the environment, their names, in this case, user Ray and Ray's hash spit out, and then you can copy that off and grind away on it with Hashcat or feed it to a hash cracking service. Maybe get yourself a high privilege account by lunch. Oops, pardon me. Kind of in the same vein, ASREPRoasting. There's an article from Stealth Bits that does a deep dive into all the acronyms and the real tech weedy stuff behind the scenes. But what it comes down to is if you've got a user in Active Directory that under their account tab, if they have the box ticked for do not require Kerberos pre-authentication, if they have that ticked, they become an ASREPRoastable account. And it kind of, the attack path kind of works like Kerberoasting in that I can tell good old Rubius, for example, I can say Rubius space ASREPRoast. And if there are any ASREPRoastable accounts, they spit out. In this case, we've got user Paul. That's awesome. There's a hash for Paul that I can bring off and roast over an open Hashcat fire and maybe get, Paul's actual plain text password and abuse for further fun and spoils. So the question, why doesn't this get detected? One vendor says, well, our customers, actually several of them said this, our customers are asking for this, but we are looking to implement this in a way that limits false positives. This is an area of that interview with Matt Warner from Blumira that I recommend you check out, because they've actually published blogs and tools that could, again, I'm not a blue teamer, but I'm assuming other vendors could use as a guide to build better detections for themselves. So as it relates to Kerberoasting, the way Blumira approaches it is they have you create a honey cred or a honey roastable account. I don't know if they call it that, but maybe they should. That's kind of fun, right? Like instead of peanuts. Get it? Okay, dad joke, not good. But a honey roastable account that then when Rubius comes along and does the Kerberoasting, they can detect, whoa, that honey cred was someone just attempted to roast that. We're going to detect on that, throw you an alert in your dashboard, and you're going to know that Kerberoasting is happening in the environment. Of the blue teamers I've talked to, they all tell me Kerberoasting should never be happening as just part of normal day-to-day business. So if you get an alert about Kerberoasting happening, you've got trouble and you want to take that alert seriously. And then kind of in the same vein as it relates to ASREPRoasting, check out, there's a great article by Amanda Berlin on the Blumira blog, getting in under the hood and into the weeds on how they detect that attack as well. Okay, next one. And one that, again, I've had discussions with some of you who are like, yawn, this is sort of boring. Key group membership changes. So we talked earlier about how, okay, I get it. An attacker probably isn't going to get on an environment, find a way to escalate to domain admin. And then if it was Bob's account that he compromised, he's probably not going to stick Bob's user in the domain admin group and plant the flag and brag about it. But still, to me anyway, much like port scanning, I want to know if key group membership changes are happening. And, a lot of companies just through PowerShell or some other manual means, they keep tabs on that domain admins group. But remember, too, that there's schema admins and enterprise admins that are very important, as well as some other groups I'm going to show you in a moment. But one easy thing you could do to just see if your SIEM is alerting on these things is, take an account, add it to a couple of these high privilege groups and see if anything triggers. So you can just right from a Windows domain joined machine, just do net group space. And then in this case, enterprise admins in quotes, the name of the user space /add. Okay. So in this case, I'm adding Captain Underpants to the enterprise admin group. And then just for giggles, I'm going to add him to the schema admins group. See if anything fires. It was after I created this video that I forgot about. Maybe I've got it on a future slide. Don't forget, there is also the high privilege group called administrators, right? So there's domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins, but also just one called administrators. Watch that group as well. One vendor told me after a pen test, well, you know what? We only look for membership changes in the domain admins group. So that's why I challenge you to do this in your own environment, because maybe you'll find the same thing. Here's that picture of the administrators group. And then in my conversation with Matt from Blumira, if you look at the show notes for episode 551, he sent me this whole list. It's way longer than I was just talking about, of other group memberships they keep an eye on. It's things like DNS admins, backup operators, groups that maybe don't have the superpower equivalent that a domain admin or enterprise admin would, but still ones that you want to know if group changes are happening. And as Matt points out, you want to know if members are added, but also subtracted. So in looking at that last, net group command I did, you might want to test both, right? Add a low privilege user to a bunch of those groups, maybe wait a little bit just for grins, and then yank that person out and see if you have visibility there as well. Okay, and then of course we've got the finishing move we were talking about, right? With once you escalate to domain admin, let's pull the finishing move on the Active Directory. Let's rip out all the usernames and hashes so that we can do pass the hash attacks or, try to crack those hashes to their plain text equivalent. And then maybe we can just log back in later, through terminal services or email or VPN and just, keep persisting in this environment. I typically use secrets dump from Impacket for this, but I've started to use crackmap exec more because, and I think I've got it in this video, crackmap exec has a flag where you can say, just pull me out the enabled users. I think I've got it in this video. NTDS. Oh, maybe I didn't. I didn't capture it there, but look in their wiki. I think if you add tac enabled, it will only dump out enabled AD users. Whereas secrets dump, to my knowledge anyway, will dump out every user that's in the database. And that gets a little bit of a tangent, but it's related. That gets a little bit muddy because if we take all those hashes and try to crack them as a bit of a password health and hygiene exercise for the organization, sometimes those stats get skewed because they'll come back to us and say, well, 40 of these accounts have been disabled forever. And yes, their password was password 123, but who cares? They're disabled. But like I said, crackmap exec has the flag to just rip out people who are actually live. So that's kind of crackmap exec is kind of my new go-to move for that. As far as, hey, why isn't it detected? Well, one vendor told me, well, our system triggers an alert when we detect some sort of tool conducting a backup of the ntds.dit file, or the, think of like the main database file, if you will, of Active Directory. So I don't think that's the way to go. Although some detection is better than none, right? Let's shoot for good, not perfect. But if you would like to, then do this kind of backup in the quote unquote Microsoft way to see if your SIEM triggers an alert. There's a great, one-liner you can do to create that backup and see if you get alerted. So I'm just going to make a directory called the backup of the DC. And then here's an NTDS util one-liner you can use to create a full backup of that file and see if that triggers in your systems. Again, certainly it's worth knowing that is happening. An attacker might use secrets dump, crackmap exec, something else, right? But again, I do think some detection is better than none. A lot of the vendors have told me, and I think Matt from Boomira tends to agree that, there are many different tools, many different stealthy ways to do that finishing move, that the focus should probably not be on detecting all of them. Again, detecting some better than not detecting at all. But his emphasis was try to prevent someone getting to this position if at all possible. So, going back to more of the basic things that led up to this point, right? Do you have Microsoft laps so that lateral movement is harder? Are you patching all your stuff? Are you using SMB signing so people can't relay attacks to take over other systems? Going back to that firewall logging, do you have that logging and auditing at least on so you could find someone trying to do SMB enumeration and lateral movement? Do you have a good, strong password policy? Multi-factor, all that stuff is going to contribute to making it much more difficult for someone to get to the striking point of the finishing move. Okay, I got one more tip for you. We're doing okay for time. We got about 10 minutes left. Let me roll today's word from our sponsor, and then we'll be back with the last tip, and we'll get you on your way, and then I'll check chat and see if there's anything to follow up on. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Today's episode of the 7-Minute Security Podcast is brought to us by SafePass.me. SafePass.me is the most efficient and cost-effective solution to prevent Active Directory users from setting a weak or compromised password. It's in compliance with the latest NIST password guidelines, and it's the only enterprise solution to protect organizations against credential stuffing and password spraying attacks. And boy, do we love SafePass.me. It's super easy to use. You just download this MSI file to your domain controllers, you run it, you reboot the domain controllers, and boom, Just like that, you will be actively preventing your users from picking millions and millions of known weak, leaked, breached passwords. It really is that easy. And I think one of my favorite parts is that SafePass.me includes a custom word list that you can use as well. So if you don't want people to be able to pick company name 2022, company name 2023, you can do that with the built-in SafePass.me word list. But beyond that, that's about how quick you can get it up and running. So next time Active Directory users get prompted to change a password, they type in the new password they want to use, and if it's on the block list, boom, they'll be told they have to pick something else. It's really awesome. We invite you to check out more at safepass.me, and don't forget to tell them that 7 Minute Security sent you, and you'll get a 10% discount. Again, that is safepass.me. Okay, and
Giggity.
we're back. Okay, last tip. This is one of my favorites. This is one that only in one case have I ever been caught doing, but whether it's early in the pen test or in the last, like, we've already got domain admins. Now we kind of want to pillage the place. Doing some SMB share hunting. And there's lots of tools that can do this. CrackMap exec. Our buddy Ken in Slack mentioned one that I can't remember now that's supposed to be awesome. But Power Hunt Shares is a PowerShell script version of this attack that I really like. It's pretty simple to use in that you just have to invoke the Hunt SMB Shares option, pick how aggressive or how many threads you want to have running, specify an output directory for the beautiful HTML report that comes out of the tool, and then just sit back, relax, let her rip. And at the end of it, you get this nice HTML report that creates sub HTML and CSV reports that'll tell you things like, where do I have read access? Where do I have write access? Where do I have potentially over permissioned or excessive permissions? And that can help you find, the crown jewels. Like we've had some pen tests where, everything else was really buttoned up, but they had some over permissioned shares that had gold inside of them, like credentials or images, like actually raw image files for I can't think of the not WSS, Windows Deployment Toolkit, right? WTDT or WDS, whatever that's called. We found raw image files there that we could pop open and actually discover what the local admin password was on all the systems in the enterprise. And we went from 0 to local admin everywhere in, 15 minutes. So I'm not really like super surprised that doesn't get caught. But one vendor just flat out told me, we don't have visibility into SMB connections happening on a large scale or over a short period of time. And I think, as Matt from Blumira would tell us, this kind of goes back to turning on those firewall audit logs, right? And being able to make some correlation between, yikes, this host at 10.0.7.7 just did a port 445 connection on 200 hosts in 200 seconds. Like that's weird, right? That's the sign of trouble brewing in your network. That last bullet there, look for the workstation named Callie. I think that was kind of on a tangent conversation we were having, but we were talking about, I think it was a Reddit post or something similar where people were saying, hey, we're a big company. We're having a vendor come in and do a pen test. What are some of your easy wins to catch them? And there was a whole group of people all piling on the fact that, oh yeah, all we do is we look for our inventory system to pick up a new box or a new DHCP lease to get grabbed. And we look at the host name and it's often called Callie. So ending on a little bit of a fun note, but if you're a pen tester, that might be just a tip to keep in mind, right? When you're going on site to do those pen tests and you're trying to do any sort of stealth, maybe don't call your workstation Callie. Okay, I think we did it. We got about 4 minutes left. Just in conclusion, couple screenshots here of just how easy you can build a Kali live box, right? Just reboot an old laptop to a live distro of Kali, and you can run most of the stuff that we just went through. Mass scan and Nmap free, and can turn your Nmap scans up from anywhere from level stealth to 11. Rubius, a great free one that you can use to password spray your environment. Make sure you do so carefully, right? Like, again, in the syntax, I specified doing this one time in every Active Directory account. I have seen some pen testers get excited and they load up a list of 50 passwords to try, and they cut Rubius loose. And of course, as you might imagine, it locks up accounts very quickly once you pass that lockout threshold. So proceed gently. Those Kerberoasting and ASREPRoasting attacks can both be done with Rubius as well. So I think we showed 3 tricks that Rubius has up its sleeve without breaking a sweat. Those key group membership changes. Again, look at the show notes for that episode with Matt. What did I say? That was 551, something like that. He's got a much more extensive key group membership list that you want to see when people are added and taken away. And then, of course, hash dumping or the finishing move against Active Directory. Sucks when it happens. Is great if your system can detect any flavor of that hash extraction. But I think at the end of the day, your focus should be on detecting other things first. I have a lot of clients who get very focused on this and going, oh, why don't we detect this? I say, I think your time and your money and your energy is much better spent earlier in the attack chain. And then the last one was SMB share hunting, which you can do with Power Hunt shares or a number of other tools. So there's everything in one big list. Maybe that'd be a good screenshot, just a bookmark. But of course, this will be available on YouTube anytime you want to check it out. I know we just about went right up to the hour, but if there are any questions, I'll just check the chat. Feel free to pop them in. Or, again, if you saw any of this and you're like, well, here's a great tip, or here's a different way to do it, please do. I love to hear it. I love learning from y'all when we do something like this. Oh, there's a comment. I just call my Kali box 7-minute security. Well, there you go. You can you could always do that. And thank you for the concern on the health stuff. Yeah, I can definitely feel my voice is tired because yesterday was really, the most I had spoken. Did a couple hour meetings yesterday and was like, it's time for a nap. So I'm actually going to go pound some Johnny Pop popsicles. Those, I think I might have developed an addiction, so that's not good. But that's kind of all the food I've had for about the last week or so. And now, even though I don't really need it, I kind of am itching. I've kind of got the hankering for one. Well, again, I really appreciate you joining and chatting about security with us. Of course, if you have a need for some pen testing, security miscellany, training, risk assessments, feel free to check us out on all these things, or don't. It's a free country, right? But I'm new to the YouTube thing, but I think the kids say, smash that subscribe bell and like button, or like bell and subscribe button. So do that if you want to. And then, don't if you don't want to. But again, I hope this was helpful information for you. Hope you have a blessed week. And sorry that I don't know what the schedule will be for next week's content, but I welcome you to come back any Thursday you want to hang out with us. And we'll see you next time. All right. Take care. And bye-bye then.
You've been watching or listening to 7-Minute Security, a weekly podcast focused on pen testing, blue teaming, and building a career in security. For more episodes like this, visit 7ms.us. And for information about our consulting services, visit 7minsec.com.